Hello, my treasured internet friends near and far. This episode's interview is with none other than Mark Zug. He has done many pieces over the years. You may have heard of one of them, a little card by the name of Gaea's Cradle. And that has only touched the tip of the Gaea's Cradle. We talk about a lot, including illustrations for Isaac Asimov, his art for the official Dune card game, and how his resurgence in Commander Legends came about. A preface, though. We did have a bit of an internet glitch, so the beginning of the interview may not sync up. There is an added bonus, though, of watching me embarrass myself when I think I've gone frozen. In any case, my apologies. And it's a great interview, so I hope you can get past the snafus and hear the great stories from the Zug himself. That being said, it's interview time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate the time.
Oh, well, my pleasure. Magic the Gathering's been a big part of my my living for the last maybe almost 20 years now.
And look at those behind you. The pieces of art.
Oh, well, the ones right behind me are Bureaucracy and Chicken a la King. But the other things are just other of my pieces. Some of my noble gases, thing from a very old iRobot illustration, and also my space lift painting. So this is just kind of the big chair that my wife and I use for having meetings, because it's got a nice backdrop.
Yeah, it shows off your hits, as it were.
Sure.
But and you've had a lot of hits,
Sure.
by the way. So I guess we'll start from the beginning, because I will tell you what, you are difficult to research. There was the best interview I read with you was one that was done by the local Pennsylvania paper when you did your art show. That one was awesome. That gave me a lot of information.
Oh.
So whoever did that should be proud.
Wow. Oh wow, that's really old.
Did I lose you?
Are you there?
Okay.
No, I said that's a really old interview.
But they asked a lot of really good questions. I mean, I think that, and this is just me sidestepping, but I think a lot of times people tend to, when they're asking artists about art, they tend to inject their own sort of flowery prose into the questions. And this person was just crack-a-lacking.
I guess so.
So
I guess so. I don't even, I'm sorry, I don't even remember that interview or what kind of questions they asked. Was it in this millennia, or was it before that?
It was this millennia, I believe, because you had an art. I mean, I guess, but then again, you I don't know how many art shows you have, but I know it was pre-C-word. I think that would be the not that C-word, but the
Okay. Yeah, it was probably at the Framers Gallery, the gallery that used to be in. Yeah, it used to be in New York. Okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't too ancient. So yeah, I had some semi modern works there, and I don't remember the interview, but was it a live interview? Was it recorded?
No, it was just for the paper. It was written down, so I guess it was it was recorded and transcribed. But it was a really, you were tough. You were a tough egg to crack.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it's true. I don't do a lot of YouTube videos, and I don't do a lot of shows. I go to IlksCon every year, and people who want to talk to me tend to catch up with me there. Of course, with this past year, that hasn't happened. It's been an online convention, but you can make up for that. Whatever you want to know, I'll answer your questions here.
That's exactly what I am planning to do. So you got your start. You were raised in Pennsylvania, and then you went to art school in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah. It was a little. It was then a pretty small art school in Marietta, called Pennsylvania School of Art and Design. It's now moved to Lancaster, but when I went to there, it was in Marietta, and it occupied two different buildings. One was like a rented gymnasium at one end of town, and the other was at the Waldorf Elementary School in the other end of town. So we had a split campus, even in that tiny town. It was but it was still. I chose the art school because it was nearby. I could keep my job and commute there, and because basically afford to pay the tuition. So it wasn't like I wanted to wanted to go to a prestigious school or anything. I just had no clue of how to get into commercial art, and I figured any art school will give me a clue of how to do that. So yeah, that's where I went.
What's interesting is that if that's honestly not the case with most art schools, but for you it was the case because your mentor ended up being there. Again, it seemed like he was there because of his proximity. It was Ken Lagar, is it? How do I pronounce that?
Ken Lager.
Okay, Lager. And
like the beer.
So you learned a lot from him. I'd imagine you were an apprentice for a few years with him.
Yeah, a couple of years. I was apprentice. It wasn't a very intimate apprenticeship, like you stay in their studio and you learn at their elbow. It's not like that. It was more like he was a working illustrator, cranking out Western novel covers and illustrations like that. For things like Louis L'Amour novels and so forth. Very formulaic stuff, and the publishers had a specific set of things that had to be on the cover. Yeah, you had to have your hero. Most often he had a rifle. There was a horse. There was some grand landscape. There was some little vignette of something indicating what was interesting about this story versus another story, and then print. And they needed it, and they needed it yesterday. And so it was very much a kind of a production machine kind of thing. And so Ken was master of this world, and he knew how to crank out those jobs and make that money. He had a whole Norman Rockwell set up where he had props in his studio to photograph models against. He had saddles, he had guns, he had Indian headdresses, all the stuff you'd need. And he also hired models via an agency in New York City. Back in those days, before Google image search or before the online model resources that you have now, photo studios would hire models, and they would get their briefs from not Ken or whoever artist hired them. I need a cowboy. You need him sitting on the horse. I need the light coming from the front. I need him half turned to the side. Very specific instructions like that. And then a week or so later, he would get a sheaf of glossy photographs, and he would tape them up beside his easel, and then he'd work from that reference. And that was kind of what you needed to do in those days to get your reference together and have really firm model shoots for anatomy, drapery, and everything. So he did that. And what he hired me for was backgrounds. I would do deserts. I would do, some woods. I would do a mountain. And then he would come in and he would do his hero with a horse on top of, my backgrounds. And he would change this or that as he saw fit. But I was just uncredited, he called it ghost painting, basically just like ghost writing, just basically just a hired, a grunt to fill in all the empty space that would otherwise be there, but is not the center of attention. So I learned a lot doing that. I learned about color theory and light temperature and consistent lighting and how to work reasonably quickly, because he was on a schedule, which meant I had to be on the schedule. So I learned a lot from him in that way. But he really didn't directly instruct me in a lot of ways. It was more like learning by example. I'd see his ideas for composition. I'd see what came out at the other end when he finished the piece and he put all his particular touches on, and then it was on to the next job. So yeah, he taught me by example, and I learned just by looking over his shoulder at his professionalism and the mindset involved with being an illustrator. What was expected, and it rinsed away a lot of nonsense preconceptions an artist might have about being an artist and making a living being an artist. So yeah, it focused me in a very realistic way.
That's really interesting, because, and I think that you were probably very suited for that, because you were working in a factory setting, correct?
Yeah, true.
So
yeah,
you were almost. I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, as a factory machinist, yes. So in a way, you're right.
So like you kind of had like that, because I could see that kind of breaking a more like sort of lackadaisical kind of artsy fartsy head in the clouds kind of person, whereas you were just sort of like, okay, well,
it is true. Yeah, it is true. And when you go to art school, you definitely rub shoulders with a lot of the more head in the clouds, artsy fartsy kind of mentality also, because I went to school when I was 25. Most kids go to school when they're 18. They go get out of high school, they go right into art school, and they might not have a clear idea of what they want, or they're in school because their parents said they have to go to school or should go to school, or their teachers said you need to decide on a school and you go to art school because everybody has always told you you could draw, so that's the next step, but you don't have a very clear idea of what your future is. And so you kind of bumble around for a couple of years figuring it out, and then the last couple of years you actually get into it. But this was a 3-year school, and you did get a certificate, but it didn't carry a lot of weight in the world. And most of the time, most of the kids were just they didn't know what they wanted to do. There were a few that did know, and I was 25, so I was one of the few who did know.
Mm-hmm.
I had been working in a factory, and I had decided that was not going to be me. I was going to do something with this ability to draw that I knew I already had. So I was focused, and so I wasn't prone to a lot of bumbling around. I already knew that I had to latch onto this illustration thing I was learning about. I didn't even, and in fact, when I went into school, I didn't even know that there was a job title called illustration. I just figured there are people who do art, like Frank Frazetta, like Norman Rockwell. I've heard of those people, seen their works. I want to do that. I know they're commercial artists, obviously. So that's what I'm doing, right? Commercial art. But the language wasn't there. Commercial art in their syllabus meant things like graphic design and typography and things like that. Mm. And then I was distinguished from fine art, which rippling around throwing paint at a canvas and sort of thinking about it for 2 hours, which is also not like anything I wanted to do. But there were a couple illustrators as instructors, and they did instruction in things like painting and drawing. One was Bob Sopcich. He's Ken Lager's friend, and he invited Ken Lager in to speak. And that's the real thing that changed the whole orient. Ken Lager came in and he brought in slides of N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle and Schoonover and all these Brandywine School artists. And when I saw those slides, my jaw hit the floor because I knew that's exactly how I wanted to paint. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So yeah, despite the fact that it wasn't a very well-focused school and it wasn't particularly stimulating in terms of rubbing shoulders with all the best and brightest, there were a few people there who were in that world they pointed me in a direction that I needed to go.
Right. Like,
So that's probably and young people sometimes ask, should I go to school? I'm sorry, a little lag, so we're talking over each other. What I was going to say was young people sometimes ask if I should go to school. And I usually say yes, as long as you don't go in debt over it, because the main benefit of going to school is that you'll find people in that situation who have something to teach you, and you couldn't have found it out without coming into contact with those people, or you may have taken years to find it out otherwise. So yeah, school is good for environmental reasons, even though a lot of what they think they want to teach you, you just have to leave on the cutting room floor.
Right, right. So you sort of like that's interesting. And so when you finished with your education, you sort of, I mean, there was not a lot of time between you stepping out and finding success as far as
No, that's wrong.
that's
There
well,
was.
how many, I mean, how many years was it? Because
It was
seems
5 years.
right. Well, okay, 5 years it seems like a lot of time, right? But I mean,
Okay.
for
It
people
seemed
who
like that while I was living it, sure.
right, but for people who have spent, their entire lives trying to make it happen, it sort of seems, at least from what I read, it was quicker than, like you said, people in their mid 20s. There's almost like the stigma that's like, okay, well, if you're not 18, you're not part of the fresh crop. You're almost kind of be viewed as like they're going to cut you out before you even have a chance, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well,
Are you saying
just
that it's hipper to be young?
I'm saying that people are ageist in the world, the professional world,
Oh
I
yeah.
think.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true. It's absolutely true. But the thing is, I when you're 25, you don't look very different than when you're 18. So there wasn't that in the school situation, but I was definitely more focused, and I didn't party with the kids because I had already done my partying, and I was totally over that. When you're
Right.
18, you're not over that. You
Right.
want to do it, but it was I was like I said before, I was focused. Now, ageism, I think that matters more in popular music than it matters in art, because in music, there's the performance aspect, and you're definitely being watched and you're being looked at, and there's an image thing. In art, no one really knows or cares what the artist looks like, who's doing the thing, how old he or she is, or how young. You're judged by your product, and that's the one thing about being getting a certificate at school. By the way, I didn't get a certificate from this school because I cut out after 2.5 years. I had half a year to go, and I just said, forget it. I'll learn more by apprenticing with Ken Lager than I'll learn with this final 6 months and that piece of paper at the end, which no art director cares about anyway.
Right.
You submit your work to an art director. That's what they care about. The certificate from the school will go right in the trash. They do not care. So I found that the art world has been pretty much a meritocracy, although I admit that there's a lot of luck, and there's probably a lot of male privilege that goes along with that, just by the fact that when I broke in, most illustrators, with a few exceptions, Rowena Julie Bell, happened to be male, and it's just the industry trusted men more at the time than they trusted women. That's completely changed now, and from my experience, most art directors are now female, and vast number of women artists are flourishing today too. But I haven't found ageism to be an issue myself. So at least that's my experience.
Right on. I gotcha. So then when you got the big watershed moment, I would say would be the iRobot job, right? That was when things really became solidified for you.
Yeah, exactly. I got the I got the job that allowed me to quit my factory job.
And that's such a big deal. I mean, to like actually become like the working artist.
It really is a big deal. It was huge. I mean, making, little money here, little money there from the side jobs, such as the one that I was getting through Ken Lager, that's kind of builds your self-esteem a little bit. But to have a publisher say, hey, we're going to pay you enough, you could live on this while you do it, is like saying you've arrived. You are actually a real artist now. So yeah, it's an enormous step to quit your other work.
And you got to have an intimate meeting with, or an intimate relationship with Harlan Ellison, which he seems like he was intense.
Oh, he I don't think he knew how to be anything other than intense. That's just his way. And it was very he has a reputation for like being intense and dangerous, and Byron Price, the guy who hired me for the iRobot project, wanted me to have a telephone powwow with Harlan Ellison, because he wanted us to meet and to be creatively on the same page. And he was sort of building the anxiety up by saying, okay, Mark, now just when you talk to Harlan, just remember, he's very intense, he exaggerates a lot, and don't get your feelings hurt by anything he says. Just take it in stride. Okay, it'll be okay. Just, there's real heavy preparation like that, and I'm like, oh shit, what is this guy gonna be like? And then when Harlan comes on the line, he's this jolly old uncle who's just the sweetest kind of guy with the incredible, most blue mouth you've ever heard. But he's so sweet, and he believes in my work so much, and he's just so happy to be on this, to have me on this project. And so we get done this conversation, and then Byron says, okay. Oh, I think this was Howard Zimmerman, Byron's right-hand man that I was talking to at the time. He said, okay, I think that went well. So he's obviously, he didn't know what to expect from time to time with Harlan too.
Yeah,
but seems like, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Oh no, it seems like Harlan, this quote that I read from him is fantastic. He says, you are not entitled to your opinion, you are entitled to your informed opinion. If you are not informed on the subject, then your opinion counts for nothing, which I thought was just, it's so funny. Seems like that was how he was. I mean, and so it sounds like he appreciated you for what you could do, and that was all you needed. That was all he needed from you.
I think it is. Harlan was very prejudiced in favor of people he perceived to have talent. If he believed in your art for his own reasons, then you started out like with a whole account load full of goodwill for him. And of course, he's been betrayed by people in the past, and if he feels you've done that, then you are on his shit list, and you just don't want to be there. But yeah, I started off with some built-in goodwill because what he saw in my work was something that he liked. It was something that resonated in him, and he thought instantly, like, he's got this way of just overwhelming generosity. If he believes that you're okay, it just feels like, oh yes, this is the artist, the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's a young guy. I'm gonna help him believe in himself. So that was his kind of mission or attitude, and he did this with other artists. Lots of other artists came through the Harlan experience too. His house was a place that physically sheltered a train of other talent that he's decided, oh, this person's got something. I'm going to let him stay here a little to soak in the, the stuff, the collection, because he has an amazing collection. The art that's there in his house, the custom architecture, the custom furniture, stuff that he has hired, bespoke, crafted and built for himself and Susan. That is just an inspiration to be there and to be in the presence of it. And it's not like he's, just some, like a rich guy who throws money at stuff and does things that way. He finds talented people. I should be speaking the past tense. I realize that now. I'm speaking the present tense. But Harlan, what he would do is find talented people and make them craft the things they really wanted to craft in their hearts. And then he would end up with the results, decorating his house. And in the transaction, well, they'd not only be paid, but they'd be paid in self-esteem, because he would boost their egos. He boosted my ego in the same way, in his particularly gruff Dutch uncle kind of way.
And so it seems
that was his attitude.
Yeah, it seems like he did. I mean,
that nurturing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. He was a very avuncular, I guess the word is, for him. And so after that, then you stepped into to do the Dune game, and that had to be, again, you're sort of like going from bigger to bigger to bigger. Was there a moment when you were even like, I mean, how did you even have a moment to breathe? I mean, your self-esteem was, all puffed up, and you had these great gigs. Although the Dune thing, that seems like that must have been tough, because having people tell you that first you were supposed to follow the film and Lynch's, imagery, and then you weren't, that had to be a tough gig in that sense.
But you are mistaken about one thing, and that is that I kept going from strength to strength. And the truth is that the I, Robot book that I was doing with Harlan and with Byron Price was a big project. It had, I think, 14 oil paintings inside and a whole bunch of pencil drawings. So it occupied me for a couple of years. And the plan was, as soon as I was done with that, I was going to go seamlessly right into doing a comic based on that same story. And some of those color plates would be full color splashes in the comic. So it would be seamlessly the same characters, the same style, but it would be painted in, comic sequential art. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do this. I'll keep doing this as long as you want, because, I'm making a living doing art, and it's science fiction art. It's art. It's a story and a genre I love. I'm getting to work in the style I love. So why not? So yeah, I was on board for that. And I did like 150 or so comic book pages for that project. The problem was that Byron Price was tied with DC Comics in an agreement for this book, and there were other considerations that caused that deal to fall apart for Byron, and therefore he had no more funding to do the comic. So it sat like maybe half to 2/3 finished, and then they pulled the plug, and it was never published. So there's a bunch of finished comic art that just will never get published or seen. And when they pulled the plug, the thing was, I was just going head down in this so constantly. I had done zero publicity. I had done zero outreach for other art directors or other publishers. So I had no prospects. I had nobody to call for other work. And so I had to basically start from ground zero and put a portfolio together of iRobot stuff, as well as some stuff from my prior portfolio, and basically beat the pavement to cold call other publishers to see if they'd hire me. And that went on for a while because I had no experience doing it. I was doing it to to very limited success until I hit Byron Price. And then they hired me with the project of a lifetime that lasted me years. And then they said, oh, project lifetime no longer happening. And so, and now I'm like, okay, now I've got to get out on the streets again and get those little jobs and get myself through. So it turned out that the Dune was one of those little jobs, little in terms of money, because it didn't pay a lot. But I love Dune. So naturally, I'm going to do it. So yeah, there was a little bit of stress in there between the ending of iRobot and the beginning of Dune, because I had very little to do in terms of making money. So yeah, the Dune saved my life because it came along at a time that I could have just returned back to the workforce. But happily that did come along, and though it was a modest project, it was creatively very stimulating and got me into the rhythm of producing stuff for games, which is a different sort of rhythm than for books. Books are, you get a big project and then you have a certain set amount of months to make it come together. Cards are like, oh, next week we've got 3 cards and here's what they are, get to work. And they have to be in, because those expansions wait for no man. You have to have the stuff in. You can't get on the phone to your editor and say, hey, can we just push it back a little bit, maybe a month? That doesn't happen in the card world. So you can beg for a day or two, but it's got to be done when it's got to be done. So it enforced, also the fact that it didn't pay a lot enforced me to work at a brisk pace, just to make it up in quantity. So yeah, that was an education. And then it was through being in games that I got with FASA, did Shadowrun, and I got with Wizards of the Coast, and did Magic the Gathering, and did other things as well that are kind of all peripherally tangential to gaming.
And Pegasus Stampede was your first card for Magic?
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating piece, because when I like the fact that the way you did it, it's a stormy looking piece, whereas when you think of Pegasus, they're usually portrayed in the bright sunlight, and they're always very like heavenly looking, and yours almost have like they are an approaching thunderstorm. Even though they are white horses, they still have that gray sky behind them. It's an interesting take.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, no, yeah, I never had anyone point that out before, but yeah, I think my idea was that because the Pegasus is a white creature, I want to put him at contrasting, against a contrasting sky. So naturally, I'd pick brooding dark clouds so that the whiteness of him would show up. Remind me, is that a white card? Or is that some other card that's not color?
I'm not sure, because I was looking at the actual piece of artwork itself, so I didn't get to see the actual card, but I will put it up here for everyone to see, and I will apologize for being a moron.
Okay.
But the I'm talking about the actual artwork itself. I can see why that was what got you into the door with Wizards.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and Wizards was basically swamped with artists wanting to work for them at the time. I guess this was right after the art boom that that came in the later 90s, because there was some agreements that made artists who never making any money suddenly able to buy houses and boats from the residuals from these Magic cards, and then they changed the deal. But then by then the word had gotten out and everybody wanted to work for Wizards of the Coast, and so when I sent my work into them, I didn't hear back for months, and I did keep calling this guy, because there was no email for me back at those times. It was all telephone and fax machine and mail. kept calling their art director, who at the time I think was Jesper Myrfors. And finally, he responded. He said, "Oh yeah, I totally meant to respond to you. I'm sorry. We totally want you to take a trial project for sure." So, so the lesson is: don't hear back, don't take offense. It's probably just circumstances and getting lost in the crowd. So just keep at it.
And so, yeah, that's
that's
awesome.
what happened for me. Yeah. So then he gave me that as a single trial piece to see if I could actually do the job, and then he gave me I think a quartet more that included Oath of Lieges and I think the Swamp Palisades, I think it's called Elven Palisades, and a few others like that. And then I lose track after that exactly which expansions things were.
Yeah, because you've done like I believe it's over like 150 different pieces for Wizards and for Magic, and I think one that we have to discuss as Gaea's Cradle. I mean, was there any way that you could have known that it was going to become the thing that it became?
Not at all. No, I don't have any clue. Generally, I didn't have a clue. It was a strange piece. The art description was do a piece that is kind of like a nest of tree elements, and it has to be sheltering a special benevolent magic zone that is nourishing to nature. And yeah, and that's it. That's the kind of description you're given. And I remember I went through a number of sketches, thumbnails, and blind alleys for that one, just because it is a kind of a confusing idea. And so what all together, I see you're using the Gaea's Cradle as your green screen behind you, so I assume that's going to be on the YouTube video too. But
everything will be shown.
Yeah, I was looking for a way to make the trees look as if they were influenced by some sort of benevolent nature magic, and I guess the easiest solution for me was Art Nouveau, because as an art movement, they would basically take things like vines and vegetable shapes and draw them out into these very elegantly planned curves, framing pictures with vines and so forth. And the curves almost started to look like Viking animal interlace elements, like plants would never grow without human assistance. So I figured I'll just make the trees grow as if they've been influenced by some interior Art Nouveau designer. So they have a supernatural level of regularity and radial symmetry and just repetitive rhythm. Plants would never grow that way for real. So what could there be but magic, influencing this?
Yeah, it does have sort of the feel of a like a womb, like a womb of trees almost, and it that makes sense the way that you explained it. That's why it appears so magical from that alone, and that's the kind of stuff that I find fascinating about the work that you guys do, because we as viewers, we can't get that. And one of the things that I also like super curious about, Impassioned Orator, I love that artwork. I am curious to know if you had anything in mind as to what he's saying to the crowd of people as he's doing his speech.
Well, strange. I mean, no, not really, because it is a distillation, isn't it? It's just, we know, he could be an agitator who's malevolent. He could be, a fighter for somebody's rights who's actually on the side of the downtrodden. He could be a Lenin or he could be a Martin Luther King Jr. We don't know what he's saying, but either of those could fit into what I've painted, just because I don't know, they're just picking a lot of things from people who would speak in the streets like that, and it was important to make it was important to put a lot of people also in the background, just a whole variety of people, just in a circle around him, so that we realize that he's not just inveighing against two or three people, that he's got a whole surrounding of an audience. I don't know what he's saying. That's for the viewer to to fit in there. What do you think he's saying?
Well, that's, I mean, that's the exact issue, is that I can't be sure. And I mean, I'm open to that being the answer. I was just curious because you do have such, on your website, you do have such in-depth discussions about some of the pieces that you do. And I just was curious because you do have a very, you have a writer slant in what you do, as, I just reading your stuff on the website. So I was curious, because I could imagine you having backstories for some of the pieces that you've done that were maybe not necessarily there, that you put in because it helped spark your imagination.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, especially a lot of the new stuff that I've put on the website. I haven't had time to put little companion paragraphs up to illuminate stuff about it, because I wanted to have the magic stuff up, basically, well, for this interview, so that you could draw from them. But that stuff requires me to sort of cogitate a little more and reflect on what's the best thing to say about a given piece, because I'll put it up there and then I won't touch it for years. So I want it to be the right thing to say.
It's also what I find very kind of like interesting about you, is that you are not afraid to say which pieces are your favorite versus which pieces are not. And I'm wondering, though, there's so many great pieces that you haven't put up there, that it would kill me to think that you don't like them. Like, for instance, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Jockle Mortar.
Yeah, Jokel Mortar. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Absolutely. And now that you mention it, why didn't I put it up? I don't know. It just didn't occur to me. There's, like you said, there are 160 or more pieces to choose from, and I probably just glanced over it. So yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. I mean, I call it Polar Leviathan, but are you sure it's not up there? Because I thought it must be, but
I couldn't find it. I had to find an actual photo of the painting, the actual painting itself, that somebody took from selling it, to get a real proper image of it. But it's not to give you crap. I was really worried. I thought, oh no, because on your intro statement, you talk about how these are some of your highlights, and so it would just have broken my heart to think, oh, he didn't like that one. I mean,
no. Yeah, there may be I don't know, there may be 2 or 3 Magic the Gathering pieces that I actually think, I'm sorry I let them go out the way they were, because I don't think they're very good. But I'm not going to tell you which they are, because some of them are actually close to the hearts of people for whatever reason, maybe game related reasons.
That's the thing.
I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. So, that can stay where it is. But there's not many, and I usually, most, like 99% of the time, I'm proud of what I turn in as it is,
And what's also
and Jokel Mortar is one. Yeah, I'm sorry. Jokel Mortar is one of the ones I'm very proud of. I wonder if you noticed that there are tiny little footprints leading away from the water.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was like, what were they running away, or were they? I mean, I'm assuming they ran away, or I mean, something bad happened. But whoever was maybe ice fishing there got the fright of their life.
Yep, that's basically the idea. Something was there, and now it's not. But the creature is.
Yeah, that thing's terrifying. I mean, like I personally, I hate the ocean. Like I don't hate the ocean in it. Like I love it. It's great. We need to not pollute it. But you couldn't pay me to go into it because it's an underwater forest, and that kind of
Well,
creature is out there.
you're a vampire, you'll dissolve, by the way. So
Well, true. Yeah. I mean, well, that too. I mean, I could go night swimming. So, I
right.
mean, but even still, I mean, like vampires don't like sharks or jackal mortars. I mean, like those things are terrifying. Yes. And so also what I find really unique about your style too is that from early on, just through looking through your history of paintings, even before magic, you had a propensity for drawing all sorts of different races and you know and you know women, men, it didn't really matter, which I think is very unique. I have not seen anybody use that much diversity like throughout their entire career. Um, where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I mean, well, thanks, but uh, um, I realize that my lineage is a very male dominated and very white industry, especially, you know, 60s and 70s. Before I ever got into it, the era of my heroes was the era of basically white men,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, giving us images to digest. And you know, some problematic imagery is even from heroes of mine. But as for why this, and I really was never intending this, except that I'm not sure. I don't know how to. I don't know how to answer that question, because actually, this is the first time I've heard somebody say this. But I'm glad it appears that way.
Oh, I mean, it's not,
So
it
yeah,
definitely
I
is
don't know.
there. It's cool too
Okay.
because I'm looking at it and I'm like, these are just a diverse group of people that seem to be like you don't seem to have an issue going with not just race, but characters who are androgynous, characters who like sort of are interstitial. It's unique, and it's something that you don't
Hmm.
see people being, you know, sort of woke before woke was a thing. And I also feel like it's something to point out too, because you were, I feel, very, and you handled this very politely, but you were sort of unfairly judged that Dark Confidant was playing off of stereotypes, and that was
Yeah,
just not.
Dark Confidant.
Yeah, and it was like, no, no. I mean, I personally think you handled it with grace and dignity. I would have been, I think, maybe a little more like your, like a little bit like our writer friend that we were talking about earlier, been a little aggressive. But I mean, it just, I felt compelled to point that out because in this day and age, when people are sort of scouring for reasons uh, to attack, I feel like pointing out the
Oh yeah,
positive is good.
yeah. It's true. You know, and especially, you know, artists of my generation are prime suspects, frankly, of my gender and generation, are prime suspects for being kind of the more atavistic uh, schools of thought, and naturally, I can see that. You know, if you're an Asian guy, you see art that looks a little over the top, and you've just been seeing, you know, Fu Manchu stereotypes in another medium, and then you think, oh shit, here it is again. You know, a sneaky Asian villain, and oh, it's a white man, of course, you know. And then you're gonna go on Twitter, and to see Twitter is a thing that has instantaneous reflexes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, you don't have to reflect on anything to make something blow up on Twitter. So yeah, and I have to say, Twitter, for the reasons that it seems like a very big time suck, and also I am a person that likes to kind of reflect on things before I, you know, look before I leap, sort of thing. And I think that this guy actually got in touch with me via email because I wasn't responding to anybody on Twitter. And so he emailed me. He said, "Oh, what do you think of this? Did you try to make an Asian stereotype?" And I was like, "What?"
What?
So no, so it was all handled very, very amicably. The guy seemed to be a genuinely nice guy, and he was just worried that one of his favorite artists was, a racist or something. So yeah, no, it was well, kind of a tempest in a teapot, a teacup.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't. I think that the painting itself, that he looks more like maybe he's from an Irish background for me. Like I feel like he looks kind of white, but that's just me. I will say though that I do think it's awesome that
Yeah.
you were in for a little while. I mean, you've been making Magic cards for years and years now. I believe that I read that you are the longest running one artist that is not one of the original 25.
Oh, wow. Okay, that may be true. I don't know. I think there has to be one or two that have me beat, but I came into it maybe 98 or 99. So that's over 20 years now,
Yeah,
22 years.
it's a long time running.
Um, yeah,
And
yeah,
and what's
yeah,
cool about
boy.
it, yeah,
Um,
and that's got to be kind of
Maybe I
crazy.
better find, yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. Yeah. It's just you can say, yeah, I'm proud to have had a long run. On the other hand, I have to wonder, should I be doing something else? Maybe I'm just taking the path of least resistance here with Magic cards.
You think so? I mean, I was excited because it felt like you were kind of quiet.
You're frozen, by the way.
Oh my God, I am. Am I still frozen? Am I? Oh shoot. Let me know when I'm not frozen.
Well, now you're in stop motion, but
Okay.
okay,
Well,
you're in stop motion, but I'm still getting the voice fine.
oh, well, since I'm not going to include this in, fuck. All right. So, but that will be cut out because I don't want to be a dirty
Okay.
bird. But okay. So am I moving okay?
Well,
Yeah.
now you're animated. Now you're in flow.
Okay. All right. So what the hell was I going to say? Oh, okay. Yeah. I feel like that you were kind of quiet in Magic. Like you were sort of like, you were never gone, but you just had pieces here and there. And then all of a sudden, Theros Beyond Death, you were just kind of like, boom, back in again. And then Commander Legends happens. And then you're getting a lot of these, these special edition, the box toppers, which I felt like is not just a reason to continue doing it, but it was sort of a tip of the hat to you being as important of an artist to the game as you are.
Well, for a while there, I was doing other things too. I had been involved in the Septimus Heap series, which is a book series,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, oh, now I've forgotten the heroine's name again. There was a 3-book series that came right out of Septimus Heap, same author, same universe. And these are books that have pencil illustrations inside and a full wraparound cover on the outside. And I was the sole artist for these for, all the 10, 11 years they were running. And so that sat kind of smack in the middle of my Magic the Gathering career. And I was making room for that and for other things other than Magic the Gathering too. So I always wanted to keep my hand in because I realized that it brought me good things. Back in the early days, like 5 years after I first started, I did a lot of traveling because in those days they sent artists a lot of places. They sent them around the world to events, and I got to travel, on the corporate dime because of that. And and it just seemed that there was always this trickle of interest from people who wanted to buy original paintings, and so naturally I wanted to keep my hand in. I never let it go very long between assignments when I'd actually do something for Magic the Gathering. I knew it was worth keeping in touch with.
Are
So
you?
with the latest ones, with the what you call Commander Legend,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Commander Legends, the ones
Yeah,
that you did.
okay. With the latest ones, I think that, I, yeah, I think that for whatever reasons, I just got a couple of really juicy, powerful cards just by chance, the luck of the draw, and maybe that's what kind of made art directors say, hey, maybe we should high profile Zug a little bit.
So, what I had read about the Commander Legends thing, and the reason why you got what you did is because they were considering to have you come in and do the swords again, because you had done them on the original paintings, and then they thought, well, you know, let's use him for something else. So I feel that there was a very conscious choice to get you involved, and it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just happenstance. It was more of like, they wanted you involved, and they just wanted to find a way for you to really kind of uh spread your wings artistically. And from what I've also, from the responses online, people have, I mean, they love that stuff. Like the Lightning Greaves is like, people just, they explode over that one, and it's really cool. I mean, it's probably, I think, the best version of the actual artifact ever done.
Oh, I thank you very much. Well, yeah, I remember the early discussions with this. They asked me if I wanted to do something like the swords, and my heart kind of sank with because the swords are great, but they weren't my favorite pieces to do because what is it? It's a sword.
You're right.
And in fact, the earliest versions of those sketches, sort of Light and Shadow, sort of Fire and Ice, um, I had included more of the figure who was holding the sword. And they're like, nope, nope, push him off the frame. We don't want to see the figure. We want to see the sword. I'm like, okay, fine, just the sword. So yeah, I was sort of like, okay, I would really rather do characters. I want to do, people doing things. Doing the sword's old for me. I don't want to do it. So that's, I think, when they came up with these cards for me. It was, the way they said it. It was the cards are fixed, the descriptions are fixed. You get the same art description the other artists who did the cards before you got. It's just this is as if you were assigned this card and what you would do with it. So naturally, I looked up all the other art just to make sure that I was getting the feel right, and I actually, from an egotistical sense, I wanted to do a better version than anyone else's, so I had them there to compare. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I'm not going to claim that I did that, but that was my motivation. That
I
was
will
what caused me.
I will claim that the sneak attack piece is amazing. I mean, it's so like, there's so much going on. Like, not only are, at first you see them and you think, oh, those, those poor bastards, they're going to be slaughtered. But you can't see this in the card, but you can see it in the painting. At the very base of the painting, there's 3 skulls of
Yeah,
what looked
right.
like, I'm not sure if it was human beings, but it was some sort of bipedal. It looked like some sort of bipedal creature, the way that
Yeah,
the skulls. And so these are not good guys that are sitting there, that are about to be devoured by this lurking monster.
right.
And
They're ogres,
right,
or
right.
whatever they are.
And it's so, and there's a lot of comedy in there, and there's a lot of comedy in your pieces too, like Haze of Pollen, for example. It's hysterical. I mean,
Oh,
you don't get
yeah.
that kind of stuff in Amonkhet. Amonkhet was a very, I mean, all in all, a depressing set.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm very little exposure to the card set in general. I think I did. I did. I think I did one other, and that was the swamp. The
Hmm.
like kind of the pyramidal swamp with the rivers of blood. Um, and yeah, I didn't. All I knew was that it was Egyptian flavored, and that this creature, this black creature who you cite in the Haze of Pollen, was really the center of attention. Um, I would do a couple things a little differently in that, I think, if I had to do it again, but it's been sold, so I don't get to retouch it now.
Why would you? What would you do differently? I am curious to know what your mind
It's
is
got a
telling.
happy owner. I'm not going to say
Oh,
anything now.
oh well, but I don't think that that's. I mean, I don't. I mean, personally, okay, if I were and I own one original Volkenbaga, I don't think I would be offended if he
No?
said, you know, this is what I would do differently, because I'd be like, well, you can think that, but I still love
Okay.
the hell out of it.
All right. No, no. All right. You're right. Well, what I would do differently is there are two large pillars in the background of the figures.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me way after the fact that these two pillars are too much the same size, and one is left and one is right, and it imparts a very stiff kind of symmetry to the picture. And I didn't even think about it. I didn't notice it at the time because it was kind of in the background. They were in the mist. But then now it just sticks out at me. It's like, God, I should have made one bigger and one much smaller. It's too even. And that's what I would change.
That's the special hell I think you artists are in when it comes to like seeing your own work, is that like we when we don't, like, for people like us, we haven't done it. I would have never seen it. Like, just wouldn't have. It's not on my radar, but I guess little things like that probably stick in your guys' craw really intensely.
Well, like the picture that you've got behind you right now, Gaea's Cradle, I retouched that one too.
And you did a whole reinterpretation of it too, as well, for somebody who did a commission.
Yep. He wanted. I mean, the Gaea's Cradle painting was kind of famously out of reach, and he wanted his own version. So he commissioned me to do another one, but I told him that, well, not only for creative reasons, but wizards' rights reasons, I couldn't just recreate the painting. And also it would be boring for me to recreate the painting. I want to do a different concept. And so I thought, okay, you've got basically a high noon scene. Why not do a different time of day? I called it Morning in the Cradle, which is like the first rays of dawn are streaming through the forest. And part of the thing that I retouched after it was published, the original card was published, is that I went into more detail on the little fairy that is in the center of the picture. And it's a beautiful nude figure. And I would have never been able to, to exquisitely carve the flesh of the butt cheeks and so forth for Wizards of the Coast, because it's a family friendly card game and all of that. So after I got the painting back, I said, I'm just going to do this how I want it. And I fiddled in all that extra detail, did some extra detail with the creatures and so forth. And that's the painting that is most often seen, because that's the one on my website.
Oh, so the fairy booty wasn't always in there.
No. Well, she was more rotated a little, so you got more side butt, and it was also very crudely painted, so that nobody could object to the nudity for the crudity with which it was painted.
So it was so crude.
So I did that, and then for the Morning in the Cradle painting, I decided just to go out full on nude figure fairy. She's not turned aside. She's got full frontal everything, because it's a private commission and we can do what the hell we want. And it's also a bit wider of a painting. Well, it's like 24 by 36 canvas, so it's huge, but
it's big.
It's wider, and the trees have a more squat, long, and low lines to them. I much prefer, in fact, the Gaea's Cradle on Morning in the Cradle to the original Gaea's Cradle. I just think it's better in terms of composition and in artwork in general.
See, now it makes me wish that if you've done a morning, you did a noon. It feels like a triptych would be really awesome, like nighttime at the Cradle. What would it look like that, that way?
There is one.
There is?
There is another one. I did another Gaea's Cradle.
What was that one?
Actually, I haven't uploaded it yet, but I can. It's called Winter in the Cradle,
Oh, that
and
sounds
it's
cool.
a snow scene. It's as if snow has fallen over everything and coated all this forest, and it's basically the forest you see in the background. The leaves have all gone away, and it's a winter scene with bare branches. And of course, these fairy trees in the foreground don't have leaves or anything, so they're like just like they were. It's just that all the fauna is gone because there's no more flowers, there's no more spring creatures. It's winter creatures, and it's drifts of snow. And I'll have to put it up. It's a pretty cool piece. I had a lot of fun doing it. So it's got another fairy, but it's a fairy based on mammalian and bird anatomy, and not insect and human.
Well, yeah, that would make sense because that little fairy is not going to really be tolerating the cold very
Nope.
well.
Nope. Yeah, this new one is the Martin-esque fairy, I might say. She looks like she's very attuned to the cold, and also you do see these warm weather fairies, but they're hiding out inside one of the trees.
Right. They're like, yeah, they're socked away. Is there any piece? Are there any
Yeah, so
pieces?
no, go ahead.
Are there any pieces that you have not done that you would love to take another crack at, as far as something like in the vein of Guy's Cradle doing a sequel, or so to speak, or a prequel? You know what I mean?
Oh, well, yeah. Every now and then somebody does ask me for another version of something, and a lot of these are very kind of prospective, but
But like one that you would love to do, like maybe something that if you had the time and you had the leisurely time to do so, which one would you like to go back and maybe play around with?
Oh man, that's a really good question, man. Um yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
That's okay if you don't know. I mean, that's a valid answer.
Yeah, I'm sure there is one. It's one my eye would probably answer if I had them all laid out in front of me, if I was surfing through the cards, and I could probably think of one or two that, yeah, I'd like to take another crack at. But I have kind of a professional's motivations. That is the only reason I got creatively interested in Morning in the Cradle or Winter in the Cradle is because somebody came and offered me money.
Well, that's
Somebody
fine. That's
said,
valid.
hey, I want to commission you, so engage those creative gears on this. And instantly I did, because there was the money offered. Now you're just asking me to fantasize. Okay, what if Wizards just said, oh, just do another version of whatever card you want another version of? Now I'm really have got the whole, I'm basically swamped with alternatives. So it'll take
Yeah.
me a little thinking to figure that out.
Yeah, and because it's just like I look at the pieces that you've done, there are such interesting worlds that happen in the backgrounds of a lot of them that are I again, and this is just based off of what your website is like as far as your writing goes. It's very imaginative. I can just, again, I guess I can sort of just see you wanting to go back to that space because you have a very friendly relationship with your paintings. You nickname them on your site. Um, they're almost like like children, or like students, that you have like fun nicknames for them as opposed to their given names, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. The newest ones I uploaded, I just uploaded under the names of their magic cards, just to not confuse people. But I might have a slightly different name that I know them by, just myself.
I like that. I like knowing what you call them. It gives more insight into the paintings, because a lot of times, from what I understand, that you could turn something in and the name maybe even doesn't necessarily become correlated with it, or things along those lines, or that things that are like that, or even that the unpublished one that you did of Sabo. I'm probably butchering.
Sabotava. Yeah.
That one's really cool, and it's a that like that right there. It's like, okay, I wonder if that kind of thing could be an inspirational thing, because these characters are really super crazy cool, and maybe there are characters that you've seen in the game that you haven't done that you could see yourself doing. I mean, I just was curious, but I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with making money from it. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the one that kind of intrigued me from the very beginning, just because how could you have a name like Yawgmoth and
yeah,
not be intrigued by that being, especially when you realize that from the descriptions that he lives nested deep in the center of a 9-level nested set of worlds,
yeah.
and that things get ever weirder and grosser as you get to the center, and you think, oh God, what kind of being is that? And then a Yawgmoth has been done recently as a
As a
human.
human, yeah,
He used to be a human. It's basically just a some sort of artificer, I think. He was just basically just your power douchebag,
yep. Just a
which is what he looks
psychopath.
like. But
Yeah.
I'm really interested what he looks like after his transformation into this this being. And I don't think I've ever seen that illustrated.
It's
Gonna be really mind-bending. It's got to be really weird and gross, but it's got to have its own kind of logic of power.
well, what's interesting.
There's a lot of ways to approach horror, and I'm sorry.
Oh no, that was
What's
go
interesting?
On. Oh well, what's interesting is that when with Evankar
I was
Kovacs,
just gonna say, yeah,
with Evankar Kovacs, I don't know if this was in the description or not, but on his knees they have the eyes, the bleeding black eyes that are known as the symbol of Yawgmoth. That's really the only direction that they've given as far as what he's supposed to look like. And there's one fan image that I've seen done of it that's really cool, but they show him in Yawgmoth's vile offering, but he's sort of distorted in part of the horizon. It would be nice to see him as a focus, and there's so much you can do with him. He is probably, if not the most evil character in the history of the game. It would be, and that would be definitely in your wheelhouse, because I do think that you have a knack for going down the sinister route with a lot of the stuff that you can
do. Well, I like both poles. And Yawgmoth definitely would occupy the most sinister and grotesque pole. There's a lot of there's a lot of in the Phyrexian world, there's a lot of emphasis on body parts that are ordinarily on the inside of the body getting seen on the outside instead. And there's bones that are normally inside getting, basically creatures that are turned inside out in all kinds of ways. And then they just make up the difference with machines, anything that any inconvenience that creates, we got a machine for it, and that makes everything work. So it's really it can be visually horrible to contemplate, but at the same time, I think it's a challenging thing to express, because it's and I'm not throwing shade on any other artists, but I don't see a lot of really good horror art, because it's easy to just get everything all splattered up with viscera and blood, then that's basically all you see. Like H.R. Giger was a master, because he knew that the truly unsettling thing does not rest in the blood and the bones itself, but in rhythms that are alien to what you're used to seeing, and that's what makes me want to say take a stab at things like Yawgmoth and Phyrexian
That would be
subjects.
that would be amazing. Yeah, Geiger, he really understood, like the face hugger, for instance. I mean, if you think about it, the way that it's built, it looks like a spider, but it has a scorpion's tail, and it is like a vagina that jumps and then rapes you to impregnate you. And
It's a penis that jumps.
yeah, but it's like, but it at the same time, when
Oh.
you see it coming at you, it's got
Yeah.
the like, it's got a like. I mean, I don't think I'm being dirty, but it's got the vaginal opening that then has a tube, and so that's inherently
right.
horrifying
Yeah.
because it is a flying vagina that has a penis that can impregnate you. How is that not horrifying? And you know, like, and there's no blood in that.
Plays Giger famously played into all kinds of like body horror and sexual I guess it's anxieties that come with, you know, I guess being people. And then he just says, hey, you know, that anxiety you have, well, I'm just going to split it wide open and just and just you know, run roughshod over it with this image, with this creature. And yeah, I agree. That is and now since Alien is like 1980 or 82, I think that's now kind of old hat, and we've seen lots of horror vaginas in horror movies and so forth. So that's kind of not special anymore. But what he did in terms of creating alien rhythms to bodies and like taking things that are of machines and making them look like animals, and taking things that are animals and making them look like machines. I think that's what probably made the intellectual brain trust that created Magic the Gathering universe come up with Phyrexia.
I can see that.
They probably said, oh yeah, we got to do something, this biomechanical thing. In fact, that's the word that keeps being used, biomechanical, to describe Phyrexia. It happens to involve a lot of bloodshed and body horror and stuff, but yeah, the biomechanical aspect, I think, is eternally fascinating. I mean, even after now it's 40 years later on from Alien, even after that.
I mean, I honestly, I thought that a secret layer involving the aliens from Alien would be really cool, because those creatures do not get old. And it's right what you're saying. Like, horror is difficult to really tack on to, because a lot of people do just immediately go for maybe that shock of violence and whatnot. But for like the true creepiness, there's a subtleness to it. So I mean, here's the cool thing.
Yeah.
The Phyrexians are on their way back. They're now being officially adapted as a creature type. And so I would say throw your hat into the ring. Because they're on their way back. And if that's something that you are like keen to, now is the time to do it. And I would love to see it some really crunchy, awful Phyrexians to play with.
Yeah. I actually know that they're on their way back, but yeah, I would agree with those sentiments.
So yeah, I want to clarify, because said earlier when you're like, am I taking the path of least resistance? And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, you should take the path, because I don't think you have. I mean, like, maybe just like slam it into Magic for a little bit of time, because you were just, you know, maybe like all the wheels going towards Magic just for a brief period, just to see what you could do. And then if you have the option always to pull back whenever, you know, you want to. But I just want to make it clear that I don't want you to stop making art for the game until you stop making art, period.
I think that unless they just decide that they're moving their style to a thing that I can't do, which is always possible. You know, the times always change. It's always possible. They might say, you know, we've decided that we are just going full on anime across the board. And I'd have to leave it be at that time, because I couldn't do anime if I wanted to.
Are you sure? I mean, maybe you couldn't do it, but I would imagine it would take you. I'm just saying you can't be as good as you are without. The learning curve's got to be a little bit quicker. But I honestly, though, in reality, like there's no direction that they could go in that you're not able to do, or that they would do. I mean, I just don't see it happening. You've gotten like
No,
what
no.
like 30 years now, and basically in the game, it's sort of like I think you're in. I think you're golden.
Well, let's hope. I mean, yeah, it's I certainly do. I certainly did like working on the Commander Legends because of the freedom I was given. We got to work in a different format, vertical instead of horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And my art director, Tom Jenko, was just a dream to work with. He seemed to be exactly on the same page with me.
I wanted to know if there's anything else that you're working on that you would like to talk about or tell everybody about. Just, current stuff or anything that's upcoming that you're
Well-
allowed to discuss.
Well, let me see. Right now, like in the spring, I'm not working on any Magic the Gathering because I'm doing a different book project. And book project is going to involve space and astronauts. I can't say anything more than that at this point. It will eventually get out into the public. So, that's one of the few things I would actually set aside Magic the Gathering for any length of time, because space is a long time enthusiasm of mine.
Yeah.
And anything to deal with, the upcoming exploration of the planets and the moon and so forth is something that I want to be involved in. And anytime somebody says we're willing to hire you to do something based, on space, bam, yeah, I'm gonna move my schedule around to do that. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing something, a book project that has space, and I keep promising this other thing, because I don't never get time to work on it. But I am going to be doing my own comic book, and I've told people about this for like 3 years now, and everybody says, yeah, we'd love to see that. And then it always seems like I'm on the verge of actually cranking out visuals for it, and other work comes along, work for people I know and expect to get work from me. And so it's very easy to set aside this, labor of love to do, to pay the bills.
Right.
But yeah, I would say you can mention that I do have a Mark Zug authored and illustrated comic book in the future, in the midterm future.
Is it written?
Yeah.
And so you'll be writing and drawing it or illustrating it?
Yes, exactly.
That's cool.
Yep, exactly.
What's the genre? What's the genre of the piece going to be?
It's science fiction.
Science fiction. Okay. Science fiction.
And you're frozen.
I froze again?
Yeah.
Well, we made it to the last question. So hopefully, we'll do some editing magic, and I appreciate you for suffering through this with me. I apologize again for the skipping. I don't know what's up with my internet. I'm going to call Comcast and just tear them a new asshole. Because this is supposed to be, I'm paying for the professional.
Yeah.
So,
the internet will be the internet. It's like the weather.
Well, yeah, but at least the weather's not charging me up the wazoo for a monthly thing.
It's probably best. My battery is down to 10% now, so I've got to charge my device anyway.
Well, that's great. But I thank you so much again for taking the time today, and I look forward to all the stuff that you have in the future.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thanks a lot, Aaron. I'll talk to you again later.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that is definitely an interview that, despite the glitches, I'm proud of. It was my longest interview. We are talking Howard Stern length, and I'm blown out when I learned that people want to talk to me for more than any length of time. Well, thank you again for watching, and until next time, I got a scoop.